perfect SAT or ACT test score guarantee you get into an Ivy League school? If you do, after all, it's going to affect the rest of your life. We're talking your career, your job prospects and opportunities, networking, your social circle, right? You know, only 0.1% of ACT test takers get that illustrious perfect 36. And it's roughly the same, like a fraction of 1% who get a perfect score on the SAT. So it seems like if you spent all your time trying to be perfect, you're a shoo-in, right? Even a few years ago, back in 2018, I think it was, Stanford rejected around 69% of applicants with perfect SAT test scores, while that same year, Harvard rejected over half. So no, a perfect SAT or ACT test score does not guarantee your admittance into the Ivies. So you might be wondering, why are so many of these applicants with perfect test scores getting rejected? And if you stop to think about it, the answer is pretty simple. So a perfect test score will not disguise an applicant who's boring, who only cares about grades and scores and has no real passion in life. A perfect score is not going to save you from the past 3.5 years of slacking off at school or doing the bare minimum just to get your mom off your back or to keep you from getting grounded. A perfect score is not going to override major personality red flags, like if you're condescending or judgmental or smug or arrogant. Finally, a perfect score is not going to make an admissions officer ignore a very cliche application that shows no self-awareness, no non-academic interest, no risk-taking, and no initiative. Are you starting to guess what elite universities like the Ivies are starting to look for? If you guess things like, oh, this person's intellectually curious, or oh, they're passionate, they show initiative, they have deeply developed interests, and they've spent time cultivating them, you're on the right track. These campuses want students who will contribute to their campus in specific and important ways. So what might that look like? That might be, let's say you're a top women's squash player and the coach at Princeton wants you for their team, like there's a perfect spot for you. Or say you're an amazing actor and Yale would love to have you in their world-renowned drama department. Or let's say you're passionate about social justice and solving food insecurity, and someplace like Brown might really love to have someone like you helping to solve this exact issue in their Providence community. That's what elite colleges are looking for. They're looking for someone who fits their campus, who will contribute, who shows passion and initiative, and is academically awesome. Hey there, I'm Kristina from Ivy Lounge Test Prep. I help high schoolers get into their dream colleges by dramatically raising their SAT and ACT test scores and helping them craft compelling college application essays. I want to ask you something right now. Why are you looking only at the Ivies, huh? I mean, you probably searched something like that because you found this video. And I just want you to know that there are thousands of amazing institutions out there. It's not about being like good enough in order for some place like, Dartmouth to accept you. It's about finding a place where you and the school are a really good fit for each other. And just to kind of give you an example of what that might mean. A few years back, I had a student who really wanted to go into forensic psychology. I mean, kudos to her. She already knew what she wanted to do at the age of 17, right? Well, a place like Brown, and I love Brown, that's where I went. Brown might be amazing, but like if they don't specifically have something about forensic psychology, then that's not going to be a good fit. It doesn't matter like how highly ranked the school is. Does that make sense? So if you agree with that, like this video and subscribe to this channel. But before we can get to the part about what an amazing contribution you're going to make at Yale, Stanford, Harvard's campus, the admissions officers do need to know that you can hack it academically at their school. right? Like you're not going to flunk out of Bio 101 and like ruin all their statistics and rankings. That would be bad. So this is why, out of all the many things that are very important factors in your college applications, the most important parts tend to be these following four. So we have grades in general. So your GPA across all the classes you've taken in high school so far. Your grades in college prep classes. So, are you taking AP, advanced placement, IB, international baccalaureate, honors, other distinguished classes, those. Academic rigor. So are you taking the most challenging course load that you can, right? So if you were to get an A minus, but it's an AP calculus BC, that's going to be more impressive to a school than if you got, 100 in underwater basket weaving. And then the fourth thing would be your standardized test scores if a school requires them. And what we mean by that are your SAT scores or your ACT scores. So those first three I mentioned, those reflect like the first 3.5 years of work and decisions that you've made, like work and decisions and time you've spent throughout all of high school up until the point when you apply to college. Out of those four, it's only the fourth one, the SAT and the ACT part of the equation, that you could accomplish in significantly less time. So if you were a total hotshot with test prep, you might study for a few months and get your score and be done. Or maybe it takes you up to a year perhaps, but shouldn't really take more than that. What this also means is that in a weird way with test prep, you kind of have a clean slate. Think about it, like if you got a C minus in geometry freshman year, forevermore that's weighing down your GPA. You can do amazingly well sophomore, junior year. It's always gonna have a little dip from that bad grade you got freshman year. Assuming, you learn the actual geometry content by test day and like nail your test, that bad score freshman year doesn't have to affect your SAT or your ACT test score at all. So basically what I'm trying to say is that if your GPA or your grades or your transcript needs a little bit of a boost, a strong SAT or ACT score can act as an extra piece of evidence that you can thrive academically in college. So that's why a strong SAT or ACT test score matters and why it is important. If standardized test scores are important to open the door to your dream school, but at the same time, so many of these elite institutions reject thousands of perfect scorers every year. Like that seems a little hypocritical, no? Like what's our end goal? And more importantly, like what can we actually strive for here? For this, I just want to point you to some different numbers, some different data, because if we look at some of these in a new light, I see an opportunity. I'm going to use Yale as an example. For the Ivy League school, Yale, their median 50% of students that were actually admitted during the 2021-2022 admission cycle scored between a 1470 and a 1560 on the SAT, or between a 33 to a 35 on the ACT. What that means is that half of the students who were admitted scored within that range. That means a fourth, or 25%, scored above that range. Those are probably perfect or very near perfect scorers, right? And that also means a fourth of the students scored below that range. Yes, below the range, and they still got in, a whole fourth of them, right? And because I love numbers, let's just geek out for a second. That particular year, there were over 50,000 applicants to Yale. The exact number was 50,060 applicants. They only admitted 4.57% of them. So if we want to do the math, that means they admitted roughly 2288. Let's assume that 25% who were like overachievers and they scored over the range, let's assume they were all the perfect people. They all scored perfect 1600s and 36s, right? That means Yale admitted 572 perfect scorers. But that also means that all the other people were not perfect. In fact, if we do the math, it would be 1,716 were not perfect scorers. So here's my takeaway that I want you to understand. So the goal is that we want to ideally be in the range. Like I'd love all my students to actually get scores within the median, like the 50% median range of their target school's test scores or even above the range. We just need to check the, sure, I can make it academically at this school box for the admissions officers. We need to get that out of the way so that they can then look at everything else you have to contribute to their campus, who you are and what you offer. So, since being a near top scorer gets you almost as much credit as being perfect, the way I see it is you can save yourself a ton of time if you stop while you're pretty darn high up, but not perfect. So if you stop at that 1550 instead of taking and retaking the SAT to try and get a 1600, or if you stop at a 34 or 35, call it a day, instead of testing and retesting and retesting to try and get that perfect 36 on the ACT. So this strategy makes sure that you've opened the door to the prestigious institution so it's not slammed in your face. Like, that's all the standardized test score can do anything. Like, the score itself isn't getting you in. It's just checking a box so they can see what else you have to offer. And so the reason I mention the word time is because, let's face it, your junior year and especially senior year, you need lots of it to accomplish everything you need to get into your dream college. So you need to be the type of interesting, passionate, inquisitive student that college admissions officers want to come to their campus because they know you'll contribute something amazing. But what does that mean? That means pouring your energy and time into your talents and passions. You need to show a strong transcript, which means that you need to make consistent effort and time throughout the course of your high school career to study, do your homework, prep for tests and finals and projects. When senior year comes, you're going to need to convey all of this coolness and intellectual curiosity creatively and eloquently into your college application essays, which takes thought and, you guessed it, time. What if your test prep process could be streamlined so that you spend half the time, but you lock in like 90% of your score potential? You score in the top end of your dream school's range, and then use the rest of your time to become that amazingly interesting and inquisitive person who's found their purpose and shows tremendous initiative turning their passions into reality. So how do you do that? What you need to have is a test prep plan. Now, there's many things in a test prep plan, but the first and most important three are: what score do you have right now? What score do you need to have to open the door to your dream school? And most importantly, which test should you take so that you show off your strengths, you improve the fastest, you get the highest possible score for the least amount of effort, and more importantly, so you do not waste time studying for both the SAT and ACT. If you want to know how to answer that last question and find out exactly how to determine if you should take the digital SAT or the ACT, watch this next video.